How you doing? I'm Dr. Paul Dyer. Welcome to Mental Health, Talking with Dr. Paul. Most of the time I do this on a Monday. And if you're seeing this on a Monday, great. It's usually called Mental Health Mondays with Dr. Paul. I want to talk about the communities that we are struggling with, the Black and Brown communities. And it's important because I'll tell you about the epidemic. I'm just trying to get my little board here that I'm going to be writing on. Let's see. Yep. Um, in the Black community, throughout the United States, we have about 12 million Black and brown kids who are not going to be able to read, who are graduating. We could talk about school systems and education systems and things like that, but this is not that conversation. But we're going to have about 12 million kids who are going to graduate who cannot read and comprehend above a 10th grade level, who cannot do math above a ninth grade level. And you might say this has nothing to do with me. But I'm going to talk about how this can come about. And does this have anything to do with just Black and brown community? No, this has more to do with the economic depressed community. So if you just take that into effect, but I've done the data research on the Black and brown community throughout the United States. This year alone, we're going to have 12 million kids who are going to be turning 18 years old, who are leaving high school, who don't know how to do much of reading. They're very depressed, they're very sad, and they're very apathetic with their lives. Now, let me give you the reasons and the how. You know, most people know me as Dr. Paul. I'm a neuroscience guy. I'm the one who talks about emotionals, reactions, and training, understanding what the brain and the chemistry of the body does, how your health can change because of the chemistry in your body, how the chemistry affects who you are, affects your identity. And now, talking with many kids, most people don't know they have what you call identity, right? They don't know how to identify, right? They don't know how to identify with who? Themselves. So we say, let's develop some of these programs. Let's get a program so we can really reach these kids and teach them that they're important. And that's all well and good. Because identity is important. But here's the thing. When you have your brain, that's 2/3 of your brain, that is hardwired to defend. What do I mean by that? So you have the amygdala, right? Most people don't know this. The oldest part of the brain is the amygdala. That's the oldest part of the brain. Now, this is if it's hardwired because it is to defend themselves through the age of development of a human being on this earth, right? And it's mostly now created through fear base. Fear is the reason why we save our lives through the saber-tooth tiger, the big mammoth trying to cross us, of trying to look for food so we can survive, right? So we have food, shelter, safety. It's pretty easy. And this is all based on what the amygdala does. It really keeps us in an animal state. And here's the thing. We have media, social things, lots of things that really keeps us in a fear state on purpose because they know what the amygdala does. They know what the amygdala does. And they know scientifically our brain is hardwired 2/3 to defend. It takes a lot of work to be happy. It takes a lot of work to be happy. It takes a lot of work to be happy when your brain is hardwired to defend itself. 2/3 because of fear. The oldest part of the brain looking for these three things. Most of the people who have these three things, they look at it and say, is the person I'm with, if they're having arguments and discussion, can they provide food? Can they gather food? Do they give me shelter? Do they give me safety? These things are so important to the animalistic of the brain. And this has nothing to do with love. When love should have everything to do with it. Love should have everything to do with it. Now that you know that the brain is hardwired 2/3 of the brain, I want to get into the thing. The last trimester of a mother and a baby, she is feeding the baby with blood, as you know that. Also, she is feeding it with information. The information's coming from the mother. The mother also gets its information from the environment, her experiences, her education. What do you mean by education, Dr. Paul? I'm talking about things that are taught to you, things that people tell you what you like. You know, when you have a child, you better beat him. When you have a child, don't feed him peas. Things that you taught. You know, make sure your child is this, because all that is pre-programming the child because you've been programmed. All that's pre-programming the child because you've been programmed. Now, as you go through this and your baby's in this first trimester, before the baby's even born, blood information. You also are programming the child, which is 95% of most people what they live their lives by. They live their lives by 95% of subconscious-based living. Things that people taught to them, gave to them, environment has stipulated about them, economic, whatever. It's been pre-programmed. That's programming. That's information. That's blood. That is the trimester of a baby and a mother. And this has nothing to do with the child even going to the school yet, right? So now let's get past that. Let's get past that pre-programming the trimester. Now you have a child that is going to school who lives in fear, no hope, and sadness. Doesn't matter. Doesn't matter the reasons why it's fear, no hope, and no sadness. But what the brain and the chemistry is doing is producing cortisol. That's the key. So I go back to here, fear, no hope, sadness. Cortisol. Once the body starts producing a large amount of cortisol, here's what it does. It shuts down the prefrontal cortex. It puts the hippocampus, how do you spell hippocampus? Sometimes I don't know how to spell that well. It shuts down the hippocampus. And it also tightens up and it kills the immune system. Also, it destroys the nervous system. Also, it kills brain cells. Also, increases sadness, depression. This is the dumping of cortisol. This happens because of how the child's living, where the child's living, based on fear, based on what is going through, based on crime rate. They become so used to feeling in a cortisol rate that the brain isn't even functioning at a high level. And you're supposed to teach a child when they have all this going on. And then they wonder why they're so apathetic. They're wondering why they don't respond to discipline in a school. You're wondering why they don't have any oomph in their life. It's because the chemistry in their bodies is taking away anything that has anything to do with love, joy, prosperity, purpose, identity. This is just chemistry. Chemistry, killing the brain cells. It kills cortisol, right? There's a term called, it's called death of brain cells. It's called apoptosis, right? apoptosis, death of brain cells. Death of brain cells. Cortisol kills more brain cells than anything of a natural issue, than anything. I hope this makes sense. So when you're talking about you don't have and you don't understand and why they can't and why won't they and how come you don't realize what they have gone through, I'm going to write it down again. Cortisol. How to release that back into serotonin. We know that children who have less serotonin has less what you call consciousness state and prefrontal cortex reaction. We know if you have more dumping of cortisol, your immune system goes down, you become sicker. This just doesn't happen to the youth. This happens to adults too, all the way up until you change your life. Until you change your life, until you figure out what's happening in your body, chemistry, what's happening in your brain, neural firings, what is happening? Why do you keep reliving the same state over and over and over again, year after year after year? I'm Dr. Paul. This is Mental Health Monday, and this is just a tidbit. We'll talk more of this later. I want you to soak this in, play it, relive it, ask questions. You can always reach me at Dr. Paul. Thank you, and you have a blessed evening.